The night was heavy, the kind of silence that made even street dogs restless. Malik's footsteps echoed against cracked pavement as he headed home from his shift unloading crates. The city's industrial corridor was deserted, except for the slow crawl of a black SUV weaving unnaturally across the lane. Its headlights cut jagged beams through the mist. He stopped. Something was wrong. The SUV lurched, swerved, and slammed sideways into a rusted barrier. The screech of steel ripped through the dark. Metal buckled, glass shattered, and the vehicle rolled halfway onto its side before coming to a dead stop. Malik's chest tightened. He sprinted forward, shoes skidding against gravel. As he approached, the acrid stench of leaking gasoline hit him. Liquid streamed from beneath the vehicle, pooling fast across the asphalt. Sparks from the crushed fender hissed when they touched the spreading fuel. Through the fractured windshield, he saw the driver, a man in his 50s, pinned by the seatbelt, blood dripping from a gash along his temple. His white shirt was soaked crimson down one sleeve. The passenger airbag sagged uselessly, deflated, while shards of glass glittered across his lap. Malik banged his fist on the glass. "Hey, can you hear me?" The man's eyes flickered open, unfocused. He tried to lift his hand, but a shard of windshield was lodged in his forearm. His lips moved, a rasp barely audible. "Help!" Malik's pulse hammered. He yanked at the door handle, jammed. He tried again, shoulder slamming into the frame, but the metal groaned without budging. Inside, the man's breathing grew shallow. The smell of gas thickened, sharp enough to sting Malik's eyes. A flicker of orange glowed near the rear tire. Flame had caught a strip of cloth tangled in the wreckage. The fire crackled, inching closer to the slick trail of gasoline. Malik spun, desperate. His eyes locked on a fallen street sign, bent nearly in half. He seized it, raised it high, and smashed it against the side window. The glass splintered but held. He struck again. And again. On the fourth hit, the pane shattered inward, shards cascading across the man's chest. Reaching in, Malik sliced his palm on the jagged edge but didn't stop. He groped for the seatbelt latch, his fingers slipping on blood. The mechanism jammed. He cursed, wiped his hand against his jeans, and tried again. This time, it clicked free. "Come on," Malik muttered, bracing himself. He hooked his arms beneath the man's shoulders and heaved. The injured man groaned as his legs dragged across the glass-strewn interior. Malik felt muscles in his back scream as he pulled with everything he had. Behind them, the flame reached the gasoline. A whoosh roared through the air as fire chased liquid across the pavement. Heat slammed against Malik's neck. He gritted his teeth and pulled harder. One last surge. The man slid out through the broken window, collapsing into Malik's arms. Malik staggered backward, half carrying, half dragging him toward the ditch beside the road. His foot slipped, nearly sending them both down, but he caught balance just as the SUV erupted. The explosion lit the night like a second sunrise. A column of fire blasted upward, scattering chunks of metal onto the road. The shockwave thudded against Malik's chest, forcing a cough from his lungs. He shielded the man's body with his own as fragments rained down. When the roar faded, only the crackle of fire remained. The SUV was a furnace, heat warping the air, flames gnawing what little structure was left. Malik lowered the man gently onto the grass. His own hands shook, skin torn and bleeding, but his eyes never left the stranger. The man coughed, blood speckling his lips. Who are you?" Malik swallowed, chest heaving. He didn't answer right away. He only looked back at the burning wreck, then at the man whose life now rested in his scraped, trembling hands. The night offered no applause, no sirens yet, no witnesses. Only silence. But Malik knew the question wasn't going away, and somewhere beneath the haze of smoke, another thought burned hotter than the wreck behind him. Who had wanted this man dead? Sirens finally pierced the night. Malik barely had time to breathe before floodlights painted the road in blinding white. Engines roared as ambulances and cruisers screeched to a stop. The quiet field where he had dragged the man became a stage in seconds, swarmed with uniforms and shouting voices. "Step away from him!" Malik blinked, hands still braced against the man's chest. He wanted to explain, to point at the burning SUV still belching smoke into the sky. But the orders came louder. "Now! Step back! He raised his hands. Before he could move, two officers grabbed his arms, dragging him backward across wet grass. The cuffs snapped cold around his wrists. The sting cut deeper than the glass wounds on his palms. "Wait! He was trapped!" Malik rasped. I pulled him out. "The car, no one listened." Cameras clicked. Reporters shouted questions. "Is this the suspect? Did he cause the crash?" Malik twisted, desperate to be seen. Behind the wall of uniforms, paramedics swarmed the man he had saved. Oxygen mask, IV, rapid hands working in rhythm. One medic shouted vitals, another cut fabric away from his chest. The man stirred, weak but alive. But no one turned to Malik. They shoved him against the hood of a cruiser. His cheek pressed cold metal, raindrops sliding into his eyes. An officer searched his pockets, pulling out the slingshot, still sticky with gasoline. "Got a weapon," the officer announced. Malik tried again. "It's not—" A hand shoved his head down harder. His words broke against the metal. He caught one last glimpse of the man as they lifted him onto a stretcher. Even through the haze of smoke and blood, their eyes met. The billionaire's hand twitched, a faint motion toward Malik. But then the doors slammed. The ambulance pulled away, red and blue lights vanishing into the distance. The reporter's camera swung back to Malik, recording his silence, his cuffs, his hoodie soaked with rain. To the world, he didn't look like a rescuer. He looked guilty. The detective arrived last. Long coat, hat pulled low against the drizzle. He stepped close until his breath fogged against Malik's ear. "Wrong place to play hero, son." The words burrowed deeper than the cuffs. Malik clenched his jaw, refusing to speak. They pushed him into the back of the cruiser. Vinyl seats cracked under his weight, the air stale with sweat and disinfectant. Outside, the fire roared, lighting the broken road like a funeral pyre. Through the window, he saw something else. At the far edge of the lights, beyond the reach of police and cameras, a figure stood perfectly still. Wide-brimmed hat, dark coat, watching. Malik's chest tightened. He leaned forward, pressing against the glass, straining for another look. Then the cruiser jolted forward. Tires splashed through puddles. The figure blurred, swallowed by night. Malik sat shackled, blood drying on his hands, smoke clinging to his clothes. He whispered into the silence of the car, words no one else would hear. They weren't here to save him. The city rolled past outside, neon flickering, sirens fading, and Malik understood. He hadn't just pulled a stranger from fire. He had stepped into someone else's war. The hospital smelled of bleach and exhaustion. They had booked Malik under unknown mail, cuffed him to a chair in the corner of the emergency ward. Nurses passed without meeting his eyes. Officers filed statements, voices low, never asking him what he'd seen. Across the room, the man he'd pulled from fire lay behind glass. Machines beeped steady rhythms. Tubes snaked from his arms. His name was everywhere now, whispers among staff. Headlines flashing on the waiting room television. Victor Hale, CEO, billionaire, alive because Malik had dragged him through broken glass. And yet, every report called it an accident. A tire blowout. A minor collision. No mention of fire. No mention of men in the dark. Malik wanted to laugh. Instead, he sat in silence, wrists raw from steel. Hours passed. At last, a nurse opened the glass door and gestured. "He asked for you." The officers stirred. "He's in no condition." "Direct request," the nurse said firmly. "By name." Malik blinked. "By name?" He hadn't told them anything. They unlocked his cuffs but left the marks burning on his skin. He pushed the door open. The room was dim. Curtains filtered sunlight into pale strips. Victor Hale reclined against pillows, face pale but eyes alert. "You're the boy," Hale said softly. His voice was rough, every word scraped by smoke. Malik shifted, unsure if he should stand or sit. "You almost died." "And you didn't run," Hale replied. His gaze sharpened. "Most people would have." Malik's throat tightened. Most people weren't there. Silence filled the room. Outside, the television droned on about market shifts, stock rebounds, minor setbacks. Inside, truth sat heavy. "It wasn't an accident," Malik blurted. Hale didn't flinch. He only studied him, as though confirming something he already knew. The cars boxed you in, Malik pressed. The crash was deliberate. And when you were bleeding, there were people watching. They didn't move to help. They were waiting for you to burn. Hale closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them again. I saw them too. The words dropped like stones. Malik's chest tightened. They won't admit it, Hale continued. Not the police. Not the press. They'll call it bad luck, faulty brakes. Because the truth is too large. Too dangerous. Then why tell me? Malik asked. Because you were there, Hale said simply. And because they saw you. The boy froze. You changed the story, Hale whispered. And the people who wrote it. They don't forgive rewrites? Malik swallowed hard. Who are they? Hale didn't answer. His hand trembled as he reached for the water glass, nearly spilling it. Malik stepped forward, steadied it in his grasp. For a moment, their hands touched. One calloused, one manicured, but shaking. Hale's eyes locked on his. If you want to live, forget tonight. Go back to your alleys. Never say my name again. Malik drew back slowly. His pulse hammered in his ears. Outside, the television anchor declared, Victor Hale is expected to make a full recovery. Police confirm no foul play. Malik's lips tightened. He looked once more at Hale. Man of towers, man of secrets. Then why did you ask for me? He whispered. Hale didn't answer. The nurse returned, guiding Malik toward the door. As it closed, he caught Hale's reflection in the glass, haunted, alert, waiting for something only he could see. Back in the corridor, the officers reattached the cuffs. Malik lowered his head, hiding the storm raging inside. He had saved a man. But he had also been seen. And now the question followed him like a shadow. Had he stepped into destiny? Or a death sentence? Malik left the hospital just before midnight. The city outside felt sharper, the air filled with exhaust and drizzle. Reporters clustered near the main entrance, their cameras angled upward for a glimpse of Victor Hale's window. Malik slipped out the side, hoodie pulled low. No one stopped him. No one cared. The walk back to Riverside was long. His shoes squelched in puddles, his arms still stung where glass had cut deep. He replayed Hale's words over and over. They saw you. Forget tonight. The warning clung to him like the rain. But how do you forget fire? How do you forget the way someone watched from the shadows as a man bled inside his own car? By the time Malik reached Riverside, the streets were waking again. Babies cried through thin walls, vendors sparked burners to life, and the smell of fried oil fought with the damp stench of trash. It was the same as always, and yet not. Because on the brick wall of his building, painted fresh in the last few hours, a red X bled across the surface. Malik stopped cold. The mark dripped downward, lines thick and deliberate. He touched it, paint still tacky under his fingertips. He knew exactly what it meant. Demolition notice. A warning that Riverside's time was almost up. His chest tightened. He scanned the block. More X's glared back from other walls, bright against gray brick. His stomach churned. This wasn't random. The timing was too clean. Hale nearly burned alive, and the very next day Riverside was marked for erasure. He thought of Evelyn Cross's silhouette, the wide-brimmed hat, the stillness beneath the street lamp. His gut told him it was connected. Her reach didn't stop at towers. It stretched into alleys, into the very bones of his world. A voice cut the air. Noticed it, huh? Malik turned. Officer Torres leaned against a lamppost, rain slicking his coat. He had patrolled these blocks since Malik was a boy. One of the few cops who still knew names instead of case numbers. They don't bother hiding it anymore, Torres said, nodding toward the X. Developers pay, politicians sign, and places like this vanish. Families move out, towers move in. Malik's jaw tightened. And if we don't move? Torres gave a weary shrug. Then the bulldozers make the choice for you. The boy's fists clenched. Evelyn Cross was there that night, watching. She didn't even lift a hand. Torres stiffened, eyes darting. He lowered his voice. Don't say her name here. Walls have ears. I saw her, Malik pressed. She saw me too. Torres met his eyes, a shadow of pity crossing his face. Then you've already said too much. Malik turned back to the dripping X. His pulse thundered. Everyone wanted silence. Hale, Torres, the entire city. But silence wouldn't stop what was coming. If Riverside could be erased with paint, then what chance did its people have? A black car rolled slow at the far end of the block. Malik stiffened. Tinted windows, sleek frame, the kind of vehicle that didn't belong here. The rear window lowered an inch. Just enough. For a heartbeat, he saw her. Evelyn Cross. Hat angled. Eyes unreadable in the dark. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She lifted a single finger, tapped it once against the glass, then let the window slide back up. The car pulled away, tires whispering against wet pavement until it disappeared into the night. Malik stood frozen, rain plastering his hood to his face. She hadn't ordered. She hadn't threatened. She had promised. He dragged the photo from his pocket, the one Hale had shown him. Her silhouette beside a blurred man in Riverside's alley. His block, his home. The proof that her reach had always been here. He shoved it back into his jacket, breath ragged. Torres was gone. The street was empty again except for the bleeding red X's watching him from the walls. "If she's going to erase Riverside," Malik whispered, "she'll have to erase me first." The words vanished into the rain. No one heard them. No one answered. But the city shifted all the same. Riverside woke as it always did. Sirens before sunrise, babies crying against thin walls, the smell of burnt oil rising from corner carts. Life pressed on, indifferent to red X's bleeding across brick. For most, the marks were just another scar on a city that had stopped healing long ago, but Malik couldn't unsee them. Every time he stepped outside, the paint seemed brighter, fresher, like it was waiting for him. He carried the photograph in his jacket pocket, folded and creased, Evelyn Cross's shadow etched into his thoughts. She had been here before the marks. She had always been here. He spent the morning restless, drifting between alleys, watching his neighbors live as though nothing had changed. A grandmother haggled for onions. Kids chased a deflated soccer ball through puddles. A man patched a hole in his roof with tin that would last a week, maybe less. They all moved as if tomorrow was certain. Malik knew better. By noon, the television in the bodega screamed the news. Victor Hale to attend gala fundraiser, his first public appearance since the accident. The anchor smiled, voice smooth. He is expected to address concerns and reassure investors that Hale Industries remain strong. Malik froze, a carton of milk sweating in his hand. Hale was stepping back into the light. And if Evelyn Cross was truly behind the crash, then she would be there too. The bodega owner muttered. "Rich people throwing parties while the rest of us wait for bulldozers." Malik dropped coins on the counter and left without answering. His pulse was already racing. This was it. The chance to see her in daylight, to prove to himself that the shadow in the photo was flesh and blood. That night, the city gleamed. Malik borrowed a jacket 2 sizes too big, collar stiff against his throat. He hated how it felt, like he was pretending to be someone else. But he pushed through the revolving doors of Hale Tower, heart pounding against ribs. The lobby was transformed. Crystal chandeliers bathed marble floors in gold. Musicians played strings from a balcony. Waiters moved like clockwork, carrying trays of champagne. The air hummed with wealth, perfume, cologne, polished shoes clicking against stone. Malik kept to the edges. He didn't belong here, and he knew it. But Hale had told him, "If you want to know who pulls the strings, watch the room when she enters." The conversation swelled, laughter bubbling like champagne. But then, without warning, it shifted. Words faltered. Eyes turned. The doors opened. Evelyn Cross stepped inside. She wore black satin that drank the light, her hat tilted just enough to shadow her face. The crowd parted without a word, bodies moving instinctively as if gravity itself had shifted. She walked with precision, not grace, every step punctuated, every pause commanding. Malik's breath caught. It was her. The same stance, the same stillness. The figure who had stood under the street lamp as fire licked at the SUV. Victor Hale stood at the far end of the hall, cane in hand, expression carved into polite neutrality. Evelyn approached, and though the room was filled with people, it felt as if no one else existed. "Victor," she said, voice smooth as glass. "Alive! How extraordinary!" "Evelyn," Hale replied evenly. Your concern overwhelms me. The crowd held its breath. Malik's pulse hammered. He wanted to shout, to tell them all she had been there, watching. But he stayed silent, invisible against the marble columns. No one here would listen to him. Not in this world. Then Evelyn's gaze swept the hall and landed on him. For a second, the gala disappeared. Her eyes locked on his, steady, unflinching. She knew him. She had seen him. Malik felt the weight of it, a silent acknowledgement, a claim, and in that moment he understood. He hadn't walked into her world. He had been invited. The gala moved like a river around her. Evelyn Cross didn't walk, she pulled. Investors leaned closer, politicians adjusted ties, donors shifted to catch her smile. She spoke rarely, but when she did, people listened as though the words were binding. Malik stayed on the edge of the hall, half hidden behind a column, watching. He could feel her control, subtle and terrifying. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. A glance was enough to bend a man's will. Victor Hale watched too, his grip on the cane whitening with each passing minute. He looked like stone, but Malik saw the tension in his jaw, the flicker of fury behind his calm mask. Then it happened. Near the stage, a councilman approached Evelyn, his glass trembling slightly in his hand. Malik recognized him. Torres had once mentioned the man's name, someone who voted on zoning laws that carved Riverside into pieces. He whispered something to Evelyn, nervous, almost pleading. She tilted her head, listening. Then she leaned close, lips moving just once, a whisper no one else could hear. Whatever she said, it drained the life from his face. He set his glass down, shoulders collapsing, and slipped through a side door without looking back. His aides scrambled after him, confusion written across their faces. The party didn't stop. Laughter returned, the orchestra played louder as though nothing had changed. But Malik had seen it. She hadn't argued. She hadn't threatened. She had erased him. He turned sharply to Hale. She just made him disappear. Hale didn't glance away from Evelyn. That's how she wins. No confrontation. No evidence. Only silence. Malik shook his head, anger building in his chest. And everyone here lets her. They toast her. They smile like nothing happened. That's fear, Hale murmured. Fear disguised as respect. A waiter brushed past, nearly spilling champagne on Malik's borrowed jacket. He snatched a glass of water, his hand trembling. He tried to steady his breathing, but the sound of Evelyn's laughter carried across the room, smooth and cruel. Then her gaze found him again. Across the hall, surrounded by donors, she turned her head deliberately and fixed her eyes on him. It wasn't chance. It was an accident. She held him there, pinned like an insect under glass. Malik froze. His chest constricted. She lifted her glass an inch, a mock toast, her lips curving faintly. It wasn't for the crowd. It was for him. Malik's grip tightened. The water shook in his hand. Victor's voice reached him, low and urgent. Do not break. If she sees weakness, she will end you tonight. Malik swallowed hard. He straightened, forced his jaw to set, his gaze not to flinch. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his glass too. Not in salute, but in refusal. For the first time, Evelyn's eyes narrowed, just slightly. Then she turned back to her donors, smile restored, laugh easy, as though nothing had passed between them. But Malik knew. She had chosen him, and that was worse than being ignored. The music swelled. Waiters spun through the crowd. Politicians clinked glasses, investors promised fortunes. But Malik felt the air pressing in, heavy and suffocating. He had lived in Riverside his whole life, surrounded by poverty and danger, but never had he felt this powerless. This was her world. And she was reminding him that she owned it. He set the glass down hard, water spilling onto the marble, his fists clenched at his sides. Then it's time someone told her no, he muttered. Hale turned his head, studying him. For the briefest moment, pride and dread flickered in his eyes together. Across the hall, Evelyn Cross laughed again. The sound cut through the music, through the chatter, echoing like a prophecy. The orchestra reached its final note, a string of polished bows drawing applause from the glittering crowd. Waiters swept through the hall, collecting empty glasses, ushering guests toward doors where chauffeurs already waited. The gala dissolved into a river of silk and suits, laughter lingering like smoke. Malik stayed near the edge, his hands still trembling, his chest burning with the weight of Evelyn's stare. He could still feel it, like fingerprints pressed into his bones. He had lifted his glass, refused to bow, and in doing so had marked himself. Victor Hale appeared at his side. His cane tapped softly against the marble, his eyes scanning the thinning crowd. "You held," he murmured. "Good, she saw it." Malik turned, his voice sharp. "Why didn't you stop her?" "She made that man vanish. Everyone saw it." Hale's jaw clenched. "They saw nothing. That's how she operates. A whisper, a smile, and a career ends before dessert is served." Malik shook his head, disbelief hardening into anger. "And you all just let her. You let her erase people like they're nothing." Hale's gaze fixed on him. "You think defiance is simple? You raise your glass once and call it courage? She controls more than this room. She owns contracts, districts, men who carry badges. If you fight her, you'll be fighting the air itself." Malik met his stare. "Then I'll learn how to breathe different." For a moment, Hale said nothing. Then, almost against his will, the faintest smile touched his lips. Not joy. Recognition. The crowd thinned further. Evelyn drifted toward the exit, her entourage surrounding her like a moving wall. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Malik knew she had already made her decision about him. When the last guest was gone, Hale gestured to the service elevator. Malik followed, the silence between them thick with everything unsaid. The ride down felt longer than it should. Malik's reflection stared back at him from the mirrored walls. Hood pulled low, borrowed jacket too big, eyes older than they had been yesterday. The doors opened to the underground garage. Hale's SUV waited, engine humming. The driver held the door. Malik slid in beside Hale, the smell of leather and rain filling the space. As the vehicle pulled into the night, Malik exhaled, finally breaking the silence. "She saw me twice now. Once on the street, once tonight. What happens next?" Hale's gaze stayed fixed on the city lights sliding past. "Next, she'll test you. She'll press until you break or bend. That's what she does." "And if I don't?" Malik asked. Hale turned at last, eyes sharp. "Then you're more dangerous than she realizes." The SUV climbed a ramp, merging onto the highway. Skyscrapers loomed above, glass teeth glowing against the storm clouds. Malik pressed his forehead to the window. Riverside flickering in the distance like an ember struggling against wind. He thought of the X's painted on the walls, of the councilman's face draining of color, of Evelyn's finger tapping the glass of her car, promising silence. His fists curled. He whispered almost to himself, "If she wants Riverside gone, she'll have to take me with it." Hale heard. He leaned back, cane resting across his lap. "Careful what you promise, Malik Carter. Words become contracts in this world." The city blurred outside, neon slicing through the rain, and in that shifting light, Malik realized something he hadn't before. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was choosing sides. The tower looked different at night. Hale brought Malik through a private entrance, past security who didn't question, past cameras that seemed to turn politely away. The elevator was silent as it rose. Each floor ticked off without a sound. Malik stood stiff against the mirrored wall, his reflection staring back, hood pulled low, eyes restless. He felt like a ghost rising into a world that wasn't his. When the doors opened, they stepped into a penthouse that didn't look lived in. Glass walls wrapped around the space. The city spread beneath like a circuit board lit in gold. A long table stretched across the center, covered not with wine or flowers, but with files. Dozens of them. Stacks of contracts, clipped photos, handwritten notes. "This is the game," Hale said, crossing the room. He rested his cane against the table and began spreading papers like a dealer with cards. Every district, every block, bought, sold, promised, betrayed. Malik stepped closer, eyes catching on images. A councilman smiling beside a ribbon cutting. A contractor shaking hands at a groundbreaking. Pages stamped with numbers too large to imagine. "This city," Hale continued, doesn't run on elections. It runs on leverage. Information, favors, secrets. That's how Evelyn Cross wins. She never needs to shout. She whispers. And the whole board shifts. He slid a photograph across the table. Malik picked it up. It showed the alley in Riverside, the night of the crash. A figure half hidden by shadows, wide-brimmed hat tilted low. Evelyn. Malik's pulse jumped. That's her. I saw her. Hale nodded grimly. She doesn't hide. She doesn't need to. Presence is enough. Malik stared at the image until his fingers shook. Why there? Why my block? Hale met his gaze. Because Riverside isn't just a neighborhood. It's leverage. Tear it down, build towers, and you erase generations. You control votes, labor, lives, and you... He tapped the photo. You live at the center of it. The boy felt his throat tighten. He thought of the red X dripping across the walls, of children chasing a ball through puddles, of families who had nowhere else to go. So she marks us for demolition, Malik said bitterly. She marks anything she can own, Hale corrected. And anything she can't own, she erases. For a long moment, neither spoke. The rain outside streaked the glass, city lights blurring into rivers of color. Finally, Malik whispered, And what about you? You fight her, but you're part of this board too. You built towers. You signed contracts. Hale's expression tightened, but he didn't deny it. Yes, I played. I still play. The difference is, she doesn't want to win. She wants to rule, and she doesn't care how many burn. Malik set the photo down hard. Then tell me how to fight her. Hale studied him, eyes narrowing. You don't fight Evelyn Cross head-on. You survive her. You learn her moves. You see the cracks no one else sees. He leaned closer. That's where you come in, Malik. You know the streets. You know what towers can't see. Malik's fists curled. His whole life, Riverside had been invisible. Now, for the first time, invisibility felt like power. He lifted his eyes. Then I'll watch. I'll learn. And when the time comes, I won't run. Hale exhaled, almost a smile, though it carried more sorrow than relief. Then you're already further than most men I've trusted. The storm rattled against the glass. The city pulsed beneath them, and in that penthouse of papers and secrets, Malik Carter, boy from Riverside, took his first step onto the game board. The storm pressed harder against the glass, each drop a drumbeat against the silence. Malik stood over the table, eyes roaming across contracts and photographs, the city mapped like a crime scene. Hale watched him closely. Information is currency. Secrets are weapons. The question is, can I trust you to carry them? Malik looked up sharply. You think I'd drag you out of a burning car just to sell you out? That night you acted on instinct, Hale replied, his voice calm but edged. Instinct saves lives, but trust saves wars. If I let you into this room, if I let you touch this board, you're not just a witness anymore. You're a piece. Malik swallowed, his fists tightening at his sides. Then stop testing me. Either I'm in or I'm out. Hale's eyes narrowed, measuring him. Then he slid another file across the table. Malik opened it hesitantly. Inside were photographs, not of boardrooms or towers, but of Riverside. His block. His neighbors. Faces he knew. Children playing in alleys. Families carrying groceries up broken stairwells. All labeled. All numbered. Malik's chest tightened. She's cataloging us. Evelyn doesn't waste time on what she can't use, Hale said. If your names are here, it means you're leverage. She's already moved to claim you. Malik slammed the file shut. Then this isn't just your fight. It's mine. Hale's gaze softened just slightly. Say that again and you'll never leave this board. I don't plan to, Malik shot back. The billionaire leaned on his cane, stepping closer. Then understand the cost. Evelyn Cross doesn't attack bodies. She attacks histories. She erases lineages. She'll take Riverside and turn it into glass and steel, and when people ask who lived there, no one will remember. Malik felt the heat rising in his chest. Not if I stop her. Hale tilted his head, studying him like a puzzle. You remind me of myself 30 years ago, Malik frowned. And how did that end? Hale gave a dry smile. With towers, contracts, and enemies I can't kill. But I'm still here. That's the point, Malik. Survival is victory in this game. The boy shook his head. Survival isn't enough. My people deserve more than breathing in the shadows of your towers. The words hung between them, sharper than glass. For a moment, Hale said nothing. Then he reached into his coat and withdrew a small envelope. He slid it across the table. Malik opened it and froze. Inside was a single photo. Evelyn again, but not alone. She stood beside a man Malik didn't recognize. His face was blurred in the photo, but the background was clear. Riverside, the same alley Malik had walked 1,000 times. Who is he? Malik asked. That's the question, Hale replied. I don't know. Which means he matters. Malik stared at the image, unease twisting in his gut. Evelyn's presence was bad enough. But a stranger with her, on his block, that meant something worse. Hale's voice dropped low. Find him. Learn his name. That's where you start. Malik lifted his eyes. You're sending me out there, alone? You think you're invisible, Hale said. That's your advantage. Use it before she takes it away. Malik slipped the photo back into the envelope, tucking it deep into his jacket. His pulse raced, but his voice was steady. Fine, if that's the game, I'll play. Hale leaned back, cane tapping once against the floor. Then may God help you, Malik Carter. Because once you begin, there is no leaving. The storm roared against the glass. Lightning lit the city for an instant, revealing towers and alleys alike. And in that brief flash, Malik knew he was no longer a bystander, he was a piece on the board. The gala shimmered like a dream stitched in glass and silk. Chandeliers dripped light across polished marble floors. The air buzzed with laughter that wasn't joy but currency. The kind of sound the powerful make when they know everyone is listening. Malik had never been in a place like this. His shoes, polished until the leather hurt, squeaked against the floor. He kept his hands clenched at his sides, resisting the urge to touch anything. Even the air smelled expensive. Perfume, champagne, and the faint burn of money being spent faster than it could be counted. Victor Hale walked beside him, his cane clicking softly with each step. No suit could fully disguise the limp, but he carried himself as if the wound were a crown. People parted as he moved. Heads turned, conversations stuttered. Even among wolves, Hale was a predator. Malik stayed half a step behind, eyes scanning the crowd. The envelope with Evelyn's photo burned like a coal in his pocket. Hale had insisted he come tonight. She'll show herself, the old man had said. And when she does, I want you to see how she moves. The orchestra swelled as they entered the main hall. Crystal glasses sparkled like tiny stars. Politicians, moguls, and heirs clustered in circles, their laughter bouncing off gilded walls. At the far end of the room stood the stage, draped in velvet, where a podium waited. And then she appeared. Evelyn Cross. Her gown was black, not the absence of color, but its weapon. It clung and flowed at once, as though the shadows themselves bent to her will. Her hair, pinned with a single silver clasp, gleamed under the chandeliers. When she smiled, conversations faltered. When she walked, people shifted instinctively as if tides had turned. Malik froze. He'd seen her in photographs, but here, alive, breathing, she was something else entirely. A storm wrapped in silk. Hale leaned close. Watch. Evelyn crossed the room without hurry, yet every step landed like a claim. She stopped near the mayor, laying a hand lightly on his arm. He laughed too loudly at something she whispered. She adjusted a cufflink on his sleeve as if it belonged to her. Then she turned her head slightly, and the cameras waiting nearby snapped in unison. Control. Not of the man, but of the moment. Malik's chest tightened. He wanted to look away, but couldn't. Hale's cane tapped once. That's power, boy. Not the title, not the office. It's the ease with which she rewrites the room. The orchestra hushed. A voice announced her name. Evelyn ascended the stage, the hem of her gown sweeping across the velvet like ink spilled across parchment. She gripped the podium, but only lightly, as if even the wood had been waiting for her touch. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, her voice a low current that carried through the hall. We gather tonight not to celebrate wealth, but to honor vision. A city cannot thrive on towers alone. It thrives when we remove what drags it down. The crowd murmured approval. Glasses lifted. Malik's jaw clenched. He knew what she meant by drag down. He'd seen the photographs in Hale's file. Faces from Riverside. Names already marked as expendable. Evelyn's eyes swept the room. For a breath, Malik swore they landed on him. His stomach turned cold. Did she recognize him? Or worse, had she been waiting? She smiled faintly and continued. Change is never gentle. It cuts, it burns, but only through fire does steel become strong. Tonight we pledge not only to build, but to cleanse. The word hit Malik like a blow. Cleanse! Applause thundered. Cameras flashed. Evelyn bowed her head as though humbled by their worship. Beside him, Hale muttered, She doesn't just build empires. She writes scripture. And these fools line up to pray. Malik's fists ached from clenching. He couldn't breathe. The photographs of Riverside, the whispers of leverage, all of it pointed here. And now, in this gilded room, he saw what Hale meant. Evelyn wasn't asking permission. She was announcing judgment, and the city was already kneeling. The applause rolled through the hall, polished and obedient. Evelyn Cross stood at the podium as though the room itself had been built to frame her. The lights seemed sharper around her silhouette, the cameras hungrier for her smile. Malik could barely hear the clinking of glasses anymore. His ears pulsed with the word she had spoken. Cleanse. It lingered like smoke, coiling tighter with each breath. Evelyn lifted her hand. The room hushed instantly, as if the sound had been commanded away. We speak of progress, she said, her tone warm and measured. But progress is not sentimental. It does not pause for nostalgia. It moves forward, always forward. She gestured toward a screen behind her. Images flickered into view. Blueprints, glossy renderings of towers made of glass and steel. Applause erupted again. Then came photographs. Not drawings, not dreams. Photographs of neighborhoods marked for renewal. Malik's stomach dropped. Riverside, his block, his alleys, his people. Projected 15 feet tall, red X's stamped across buildings like open wounds, the crowd cheered as if it were fireworks. Evelyn's smile widened, calm and patient. There are places in this city, she continued, that cannot be saved. Places that drag down everything around them. Poverty, crime, decay. We can no longer allow rot to fester. We must remove it, so that all may rise. The words cut sharper than any blade. Hale's jaw tightened beside him. His cane tapped once against the marble, an angry heartbeat Malik could feel in his bones. Malik wanted to scream. He wanted to leap onto the stage, tear down the screen, force them all to see the lives behind those walls. Instead, he stood frozen, nails biting into his palms, breath shallow. Evelyn pressed on, her cadence smooth, her authority absolute. This is not cruelty. This is mercy. This is how we cleanse. The crowd roared its approval. Malik felt his chest collapse. Faces flashed in his mind. The grandmother haggling for onions, the kids with their deflated soccer ball, the man patching his roof with tin. None of them knew their futures were being auctioned away in this glittering room. And then Evelyn did something worse. She turned her head slightly, her eyes sweeping across the audience, and for a heartbeat, they locked onto him. Her gaze didn't surprise him this time. What shook him was the faintest curve of her lips, a smile not of recognition, but of confirmation. She knew. She knew he was from Riverside. She knew he had seen the marks. She knew he would hear every word she spoke tonight as a death sentence, and she wanted him to. The orchestra swelled again. Glasses clinked. Donors pledged millions into microphones. The screen behind her gleamed with visions of towers that would bury his neighborhood in shadow. Hale leaned close, voice a low rasp. Do not move. Do not give her what she wants. Malik's jaw trembled. She just declared war on my home. She declared war years ago, Hale whispered. Tonight she just invited you to watch. Malik's throat tightened until it hurt. His body trembled with a fury that felt bigger than him, a fire lit by every word she had spoken. Evelyn Cross finished with grace, bowing her head as though humbled by the worship of the crowd. The applause thundered again, endless, drowning everything else. But Malik heard only silence inside. a silence heavier than fire. When the ovation finally faded and the music swelled to carry guests toward another toast, Malik whispered the truth he could no longer bury. If she thinks Riverside will burn quietly, she's wrong. The gala bled into midnight, but the applause still echoed. Evelyn Cross had left the stage, swept away by a tide of donors and politicians eager to touch the hem of her victory. The orchestra played louder, the champagne flowed thicker, and the room disguised the violence of her words with laughter and music. Malik stood at the edge, his body still rigid, the images of Riverside projected behind his eyes. Every cheer felt like a nail hammered into his chest. Victor Hale broke the silence beside him. "Now you've seen!" Malik turned sharply. "She just signed the death warrant for my home." Hale's eyes narrowed. "No. She dressed it in silk and applause so the city would cheer while it burned." "That's her genius." Malik's fists clenched. "And what do you call me then? Collateral?" Hale's cane tapped against the marble, sharp and deliberate. "I call you a survivor. But survival is not enough anymore. Tonight you learned what it costs to stay silent. Now you decide if you will stay that way." The words struck deep. Malik felt the walls of the hall closing in, the chandeliers above flickering like watchful eyes. He wanted to run, to breathe air not poisoned by wealth and lies. But beneath the urge to flee, something stronger burned. He met Hale's gaze. "I'm not staying quiet. Not while she paints X's on my block and calls it mercy." For the first time, Hale's jaw loosened. There was pride in his eyes, tempered with dread. "Then you've crossed the line. Once you defy her, there is no going back." Malik exhaled, shaky but firm. "Then I don't go back." The orchestra surged into another waltz. Couples spun across the floor, blind to the storm brewing at its edge. Evelyn drifted past with her entourage, her laughter slicing through the music. She didn't look at Malik this time. She didn't need to. Her speech had already marked him. Hale touched his arm. "Come." They slipped out through a side corridor, the noise of the gala fading behind them. The hallway was lined with portraits of past donors, smiling faces immortalized in gilded frames. Malik barely saw them. His mind still burned with the image of Riverside smothered under steel and glass. The service elevator hummed as it carried them down. Hale leaned on his cane, his breath uneven, but his eyes remained sharp. "You wanted to fight. Tonight she handed you the battlefield." Malik's hands shook. "Then tell me how." Hale studied him. "Start small. Information, names, the man in that photograph with her. Find him. Find why she brought him to Riverside." "He's the thread." "Pull it and her tapestry unravels." The doors slid open to the underground garage. Their SUV waited, engine idling. Hale paused at the threshold, his expression grave. "Understand this, Malik. You will be hunted. They'll twist your name, your face, your history. They'll make you the villain in your own story. If you stay in this, you carry that weight forever." Malik stared back, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. "If I leave, Riverside carries it alone. I can't let that happen." Hale nodded once. The faintest trace of respect crossed his features. "Then welcome to the game." They climbed into the SUV. The city outside was still alive with laughter, towers glowing like teeth against the storm. But for Malik, the night had shifted. The fire wasn't behind him anymore. It was ahead, waiting. He whispered to the glass as the car pulled away. "If she thinks we'll vanish without a fight, she doesn't know Riverside." The gala ended, but the night didn't release him. By the time Malik stepped out of Hale Tower, the rain had thickened to a curtain. Taxis lined the curb, headlights smearing against the wet asphalt. Guests in gowns and tuxedos slipped into polished cars, their laughter muffled by closing doors. Malik stood apart, hood pulled low, the borrowed jacket heavy on his shoulders. He felt raw, as if Evelyn Cross had stripped skin from bone with nothing but her smile. Hale's SUV idled nearby. The door opened. "Get in," Hale said. His tone was steady, but the stiffness in his jaw betrayed something else. Malik obeyed. The leather seat swallowed him, the smell of rain and fuel clinging to his clothes. The driver pulled away, city lights streaking past in blurred rivers. For a time, silence filled the cabin. Malik's hands shook against his knees. He forced the words out. "She saw me." Hale didn't pretend not to understand. I know. She didn't care, Malik said. She looked at me like I was already gone. Hale's gaze stayed fixed on the glass. That's her power. She doesn't need to lift a hand. Fear does the work for her. But you, he paused, weighing the weight of his words. You broke her silence tonight. Malik turned, anger rising with the dread. Then what happens now? Do I wait for her to erase me too? Hale's voice hardened. Now you decide. Run back to Riverside and hope the shadows forget your name. Or stay, learn, fight. The word filled the car like thunder. Fight. Malik laughed bitterly. Fight with what? A slingshot? Hale's lips curved faintly. You've already proven that was enough once. His voice sharpened. Listen, Malik, men like me, we build towers. But towers don't stand without the ground. You are the ground. You know the cracks, the faces, the alleys. That's what she fears. Not my money, not my boardrooms. You. Malik stared out at the skyline, glass and steel blazing against the storm. Down below, Riverside lay in darkness, walls bleeding with red X's. He saw the kids with their soccer ball, the grandmother with her onions, the man patching his roof. His voice broke low. If I stay, what happens to them? Hale's tone softened. Then maybe their walls don't fall. Maybe their names don't vanish. Maybe Riverside breathes another day. The SUV slowed. Malik leaned forward, expecting Riverside. But this wasn't his block. The car eased into a quiet alley downtown, far from lights, far from cameras. The driver opened the door. Rain tapped against cobblestones. Why here? Malik asked. Hale reached into his coat. From inside, he pulled a sealed envelope, thick and weighty. He pressed it into Malik's hands. Because this is where you begin. Malik frowned, tearing it open. Inside was a photograph, grainy, black and white. Evelyn Cross stood in Riverside, hat tilted. Beside her, a man Malik didn't recognize. His face was blurred, but the background was unmistakable. Malik's stomach dropped. She was there. She always was. Hale said quietly. Now you know it wasn't just me she marked. It was you, your home, your people. Malik's grip trembled. Rain spotted the paper, smearing the ink. He looked at Hale, fire burning through his exhaustion. Then I don't run. For the first time since the crash, Hale's shoulders eased. He nodded once. Good, because now, Malik Carter, you're not just a survivor. You're a player. The SUV door shut. Rain hammered harder, the city roaring around them. Malik stared down at the blurred face in the photo, the question echoing in his chest. Who was this man beside Evelyn? And why had she brought him to Riverside? The rain did not stop. It pressed against the city like a weight, flooding gutters, streaking windows, washing Riverside in silver light. Malik walked the alleys with the envelope clutched tight, the photograph burning in his hand. Evelyn Cross's shadow seemed to bleed from the paper, her hat tilted, her posture calm. And beside her, the blurred man, standing in Malik's world. On Malik's block, where children played and walls were now marked with red X's. She had always been there, watching, waiting. Malik shoved the photo into his jacket, but it didn't leave him. Every corner he turned, he expected her silhouette. Every window felt like it held her gaze. He could almost hear her whisper, erase. By dawn, Riverside stirred awake. Vendors lit burners, smoke rising with the smell of fried oil. Workers shuffled toward buses, shoulders hunched against the rain. And on every other wall, the red X glared like a death sentence. Malik stopped at one, dripping paint running down to meet puddles below. He pressed his palm against it, feeling the cold brick underneath. Behind him, a voice cut through the storm. Bold, isn't it? Malik turned. Officer Torres leaned against a lamppost, coat soaked, eyes tired. He had been on this block since Malik was a boy, one of the few cops who still walked streets instead of driving past. They don't bother hiding it anymore, Torres said, nodding at the X. Clear it out. Build glass towers. Sell it back to the same people who can't afford it. Malik swallowed. And Evelyn Cross? Torres's jaw tightened. His gaze flicked around the alley. Don't say her name here. The walls have ears. Malik stepped closer, his voice sharper. She was there that night. I saw her. Torres studied him for a long moment, then shook his head. Then you've seen too much. The words landed heavy. Malik turned back to the red X, rain dripping from his hood. His fists curled. Too much. That's what everyone kept saying. Hail. The caller. Now Torres. But if he stayed silent, Riverside would vanish. If he spoke, he would vanish first. Some choice. A car slowed at the end of the block. Black, tinted windows. Malik's pulse spiked. The rear window slid down an inch. Just enough. Evelyn. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The rain carried her silence across the street. She raised one finger, tapped it once against the glass. Then the window rolled up and the car slid away, tires hissing against wet pavement. Torres muttered a curse. Malik stood rooted, the weight of her gesture carved into his chest. She hadn't threatened. She hadn't ordered. She had promised. He pulled the photograph from his jacket again, rain spotting the paper. The blurred man beside Evelyn stared back at him, faceless but present. Malik realized then the fight wasn't about towers or contracts. It was about lives marked for erasure, one X at a time. His block. His people. He tucked the photo away and lifted his hood. The rain felt different now, less like a weight and more like a cleansing fire. He turned to Torres. If she's going to erase Riverside, Malik said, voice steady, then she'll have to erase me first. Torres looked at him, eyes hard, but not unkind. Then God help you, kid. Malik stepped into the street, water splashing around his shoes. The city loomed above, glass and steel pressing down. Somewhere in those towers, Evelyn waited. Somewhere in those shadows, Victor Hale plotted. And Malik, a boy with a slingshot and a scar, had chosen to stand between them. The storm roared louder. He whispered to the rain, a question not yet answered. Did I save a man's life? Or sign my own sentence? The city gave no reply. Only silence. Only rain, and the game continued.